YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. A few days away until the NFL draft. Got a bunch of videos on the channel for you guys to check out to get ready. And here's another one. We're taking a look at teams that could trade up, the prime candidates, the maybe candidates, then the teams in the same categories that can trade back, and then teams that I think could just make a deal. It's just tough to say which way. They could go either way. So we'll just take a look at the teams, and there's going to be surprises. You know, last year we expected the Chargers and the Dolphins to move up early in the draft. They didn't do that. They stayed put, and then the Chargers moved back in for Kenneth Murray. We did not expect that. Nobody expected that. So there will be surprises, and that's what makes the draft so great. We got my top 50 players coming still. We got my final mock. We got the fan voted mock. We got rumors video coming still. Then we got winners, losers, grades throughout the NFL draft. We got you covered on Twitter as well. Make sure you follow that, subscribe. Any link that you're looking for, pinned in the comments. You guys know the drill. Here's our Twitter. Make sure you follow it. Just constantly talking about everything. We got polls on here. We got everything on the Twitter at GoatHouse NFL. Link down below. Check it out. Prime trade up candidates. These are the prime teams here. The Broncos are starting to come down a little bit, though. They're starting to, because the next section is potential trade up candidates. Teams that, yeah, they might be able to do it, you know. They're kind of borderline here. The order is earliest to latest how they pick. Mainly focusing on first round here, but if I felt like I needed to use the teams that don't pick in the first round, like the Texans, I did, because they actually have a lot of picks. For a team that doesn't have a first or second round pick, they have a lot of picks. And they signed a bunch of players in free agency. They're 1-year deals, but they signed a bunch of players, so I think they're able to kind of move up if they needed to. Not into the first round, I don't think. But I would look out for them trying to move up into round 2. Definitely look out for them. But the Broncos, they kind of all of a sudden got really quiet when we're talking about trading up for quarterback. And that kind of feels like, you know, maybe they're still in on it. Maybe they want a team to think they don't need to jump. Maybe the Patriots, they don't need to jump us. That's what's make it sound like that. Possibility, but they are definitely a team to watch. The Chargers, I mocked a trade up with the Chargers several times for a guy like Penei Sewell. We once thought maybe they could, a long time ago, we thought they could do it for Kyle Pitts. They maybe still would like that. They need a tackle so bad, though, but I still think that's possible. It's interesting because I think teams, let's say the Falcons don't trade 4. And then the Bengals, of course, aren't going to trade 5. The Dolphins, we're going to talk about them. We don't think they're going to trade 6, or they could. It's not a high percentage maybe. So that leaves the Lions as like the hot trade spot. We'll talk about the Lions, but, it's going to be teams fighting to trade there for a quarterback. Look at the Patriots, some other teams. Then there's teams fighting to trade for a tackle like the Chargers. So that's why most drafts, it's few teams fighting to trade up for the same thing. That's why it's unique this year. Patriots, definitely an easy one. They kind of built the roster around the quarterback first, and now they're going to get the quarterback. We think that it's obviously a good move. Washington's an interesting one because everyone's convinced, not everyone, people are convinced that they could trade up for a quarterback. They're a prime trade up for a quarterback. It's still very possible. It's definitely a team to watch if maybe the 5th quarterback starts to fall a little bit. But I would actually watch out for them. Not trading up, but not as far as people are kind of saying for that quarterback, but for maybe a tackle like Christian Darsaw. That might let some people down if, let's say that 5th quarterback is still up on the board. Probably wouldn't be, though, but and they traded up and they're on the clock all of a sudden. Everybody will be like, who's this for? Is this for a quarterback? It could be a tackle. It really could be, because they are a tackle and a quarterback away right now, but they do have some solid quarterbacks that could play. The question is, are they going to win them a Super Bowl? Probably not. The Buccaneers, usually teams that are short on cap, they're almost guaranteed to trade down. But usually the teams that are short on cap need to fill roster positions. The Buccaneers need to do the opposite, so they may want the higher pick and get rid of more picks this year, have a limited amount of picks, but get some good players. So I would definitely watch out for the Buccaneers. They could turn some of those picks if they have to in the next year picks as well. We talked about the Texans. They got, for a team that doesn't have picks in round 1 or 2, they got a decent amount of picks. They signed a decent amount of players. They could move up into round 2 perhaps. Potential trade up teams, so not too far off those teams. The Eagles went from 6 to 12. They traded back, and we actually are hearing they could go back up. It wouldn't really make sense if they're really want to move up for a guy that they could have got at 6. That doesn't make a whole bunch of sense, but They did get a future first round pick out of it, I guess. So if they end up trading less, sure. But mainly up here because that's what we've heard. That's what the rumors are saying. I don't think they would be smoke. Why would it release as smoke that the Eagles are trying to trade up? I just don't think they're a prime team just because that news came out. I think they're monitoring a player or two if they slide a little bit, perhaps. And then they could pull what the Dolphins did kind of that with them. Cardinals, I've heard they can go up for a receiver. Now, I'm not saying they're going up for a receiver. That specific receiver part could be smoke. It could be for a corner. They could stay put. They're in a weird spot at 16 where it's like, there's some good valuable players there, but is it what they're looking for? Expected to be there, I'd say. Is it what they're looking for? So they may have to trade up to get that guy, whether it's a receiver or a corner. Could be either or there. So it's a possibility. The only reason they're not prime maybe is because, I think if they trade away, their second, that could be a problem because they're clearly in win now mode based on their offseason, but they still, it'd be one thing if they needed like one more thing, one more piece. I don't see them like that. I see them needing a corner. They got a pretty good receiver room, but I think if they can get some guy, specifically a slot that gets open in the middle of the field, they could add a tight end. They could add another edge rusher. They could defensive line on their 3-4. They definitely could add. We talked about corner. Some of these things are major needs. Some of them aren't big, but they could use it to be more of that contender. So I wouldn't really recommend, unless they get this big time player and they don't give up a bunch, so that's why they're more potential. The Jets with that 23rd pick, I definitely think it's a possibility because they have a good amount of picks. They got 2 first-rounders next year, don't forget. I don't think when they use 23 if they use 23 to move up, that they'll use a next year first, but having that kind of backup, that extra pick kind of makes you feel a little more comfortable to move up this year. I think it's a possibility, to get their guy. I think they can view Azeez Ojulari as their guy. I can see them viewing maybe a guy like Elijah Vera-Tucker as their guy if they want to go guard. So maybe they have to go up with that 23rd pick. You got your quarterback in place with the second pick. It kind of makes sense. So this one, I haven't heard anything on it. They probably would be prime if I heard anything at all on it. It just kind of feels like it could really happen to me. The Browns, pretty damn complete team. They could go through this draft really without adding any offense, and I'm not saying they're going to do that, but it'll kind of be okay. It won't be the end of the world or anything, so that's kind of a good thing. They could use a linebacker, they can use interior D-line and edge rusher. They're not dying to get anything, but they are if it's that right player. So that makes them a potential trade up to get that right player because they don't need a long list of picks. Ravens. They got 2 first-round picks. Anytime you got 2 first-round picks, you could be trading up with one, back with another, but it just feels like the only thing they would do is trade up. And, it would – but they're under potential because it would be kind of odd. It would be odd if they traded back because they have 27 and 31, but, if they trade up, I don't know. It's very possible, but it wouldn't they traded away picks with Orlando Brown, so it wouldn't be – if they traded up and ended up with less picks total after the Orlando Brown trade and that, it probably wouldn't feel that great. So, but they could trade up because they have 2 picks. They might be targeting the right guy. You're thinking they have ammo, but do they really have ammo? They don't have a second-round pick, so I don't know if they really have the ammo, but just because they have 2 first-round picks. Teams that, and we'll circle back, talk about some teams that could actually trade up too. We'll circle back here in a second. You'll see what I mean. But prime to trade down. Put the Falcons in here, just like the Broncos with prime to trade up. They're almost on the fence for me now with this. They might be in the middle here because the more and more I think about it, I've recently had Kyle Pitts going 4. I'm going to stick with that. My final mock isn't out yet, but it's 99.99% chance I'm going to stick with Kyle Pitts for the Falcons. I'm not going to have him trade down. I think they really like him. Generational talent, fits Arthur Smith's scheme. It's going to make them a lot better right now. They're trying to win right now. But they do need cap relief, and the news that coming out that Julio could be the way out there kind of sounds like teams are calling them because they have a feeling they're taking Pitts and they need cap relief another way. So more and more happens, more and more comes out. It feels like they are staying put and taking Kyle Pitts. Could it be Jamar Chase, though, if they are moving on from Julio Jones? I still think it's Kyle Pitts, but I'm starting to think it's less and less likely they trade down, but it's still a possibility. The Lions, that's a big-time one, sitting there at 7. It's kind of a rebuild team for the most part here, letting Galladay walk, gaining all these draft picks, bringing in Goff, still a young quarterback. And they could trade down, and they can still get pretty good value with that pick, and they get picks in return. Teams are fighting to get up to that spot, because if the Falcons don't trade, we talked about this, we don't think the Bengals, we'll talk about the Dolphins in a little bit, and then the Lions are kind of that prime spot for teams to trade up, whether it's for a tackle or a quarterback. So definitely a team. The Giants, Dave Gettleman has never traded down, but it's come out that they're interested in trading down. They kind of have a target where they know they can move back and get. I don't believe that's smoke. Does that mean they're guaranteed to trade down? No, but they are a prime candidate. Because we do think they are targeting a certain someone that they know they can move back, whether it's Azeez Ojulari, Jamin Davis, somebody like that. I think it's a possibility. The Colts, kind of borderline prime / potential trade down. They're looking to recoup some of those picks, from losing Carson Wentz, and it's a possibility because they love their draft picks. That they've been doing pretty well in the draft, and you look at the board, the edge rushers are kind of falling in that range where they actually could trade back and still get one. Or if they're really looking to get that left tackle, it'd be in their best interest to trade down and take that left tackle. Steelers, because they have they want to win now, and they have a lot of needs where they're going to need between day 1 and day 2. They want to have more picks than they have right now, even if that means trading down, because that means more potential starters that they need to be able to contend. They also don't have a ton of cap space either, so that it would make a lot of sense on all levels there. In the Saints, this would probably involve trading out of the first round, so they don't have that's the downside. You don't have that first round pick with the player option or the team option, at the end of that player's contract, but very limited cap space. And they have limited roster spot, or they have a lot of roster spots available because they cut a bunch of players to get down to that cap space. So the reason being cap relief and to fill more roster spots. More picks will actually mean less of cap hits if you get out of the first round. So that's another possibility here. I think the strongest ones here are the Lions, Giants, Steelers, Saints probably, but the other two are pretty strong, and we've heard some things on that. Potential trade down candidates, and we're getting to more teams after this. So if you're looking for a team, there's a reason for it probably. We don't talk about every single team in this video though, but Panthers could trade down. It was a prime team at one point, and then we hear they have 18 first round grades. They told us, their GM, and that if they trade down, they're going to miss out on one of those guys. They wouldn't have to go. They couldn't go far, so they could still trade down and get their guy. But if it's that thin on how many, it's really not that thin. A lot of teams are like that, but maybe they want the best guy on their board. If they don't have over 20 guys as first round grades, so they could stay put, but it's definitely a trade down spot. Somebody may offer them a lot to get ahead of the Broncos right there. That's definitely a possibility. The Raiders, I'm about to get to teams that are kind of in between. I can see them doing either or. I was about to put the Raiders there. I end up going trade down though, and I in a way could see them trade up at the same time, because where they sit in the draft, there isn't really extreme value unless it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And do they kind of already feel like they have that role filled where they don't need that guy? That's up in the air. We're going to find out on draft night perhaps. Other than that, there's really no great value projected in that range. Maybe somebody else might slide. It happens all the time. So and they're somewhat limited on cap space. They'll have enough for this draft class, but barely. But if they move down and get more picks to help themselves out, and then help themselves out in terms of saving that little extra cap space that they could use, it's a possibility in my opinion. Just they're sitting in kind of a weird spot. I mentioned the Cardinals kind of sit in a weird spot, where the Raiders pick one spot after them. So that's kind of a weird spot in the first round, I figured. Packers are limited on cap space. They didn't really gain anything in free agency, and they lost some things, so they could use the amount of players with more draft picks. They have a lot of draft picks as it is, but they also can use that cap relief if they trade down. I'd say most likely they stay put, but it's a possibility for those reasons I explained. The Buffalo Bills, same exact reasons as the Packers, pretty much. They didn't really lose players like the Packers, but they need some cap relief help. For them though, that's the problem with the Bills and the Packers both trading down. They almost feel like they're a big piece away from playing each other in the Super Bowl, really. And so maybe the opposite. Maybe they can go to the Bucs on the Bucs side and trade up. So they're kind of on the fence too. But it's that cap situation is the problem. The Seattle Seahawks. have only 3 picks in this draft, and they need to trade back to get more picks. That's basically what needs to happen, and they need more picks. I definitely, I almost want to put them in the prime, but maybe, maybe they, trying to think, they could add picks this year by trading next year picks, possibility as well. They're kind of on the fence. Could be a prime candidate, but just not really so much day one, which we're really focusing on here. Interesting page here. Teams that I just get the feeling that, not every single one of these teams, but I think a chunk of these teams, I know there's only 4, but really could trade. I just can't make up my mind if they're going to go up or go down. Mainly you look at the Dolphins and the Jags are in the same boat. They got 2 picks. The Jags aren't going to trade their first pick, so you look at pick 25, and when you have a load of picks, you have the ability to go trade up because you can afford to move on to those picks. But, the guys I feel like that fit their team and that they could be targeting, they could are more of trade down guys in that 25. So I can see either way. The Dolphins, they've already made trades. They have 2 picks, so they're more likely to make a trade. Pick 6, we've heard they actually can move down a little bit. It wouldn't make any sense to move down past 11. They had 12. It wouldn't make any sense. So somewhere in that 7 to 11 range, in that, most likely they probably stay put, but they also could move up with 18. I mean, they can move down with 18 too, but they can move up with 18 because they have the extra ammo. It's a possibility. The Vikings, before this morning, I would have said that this definitely could be a trade down team because that's what the Vikings do. Their GM, Rick Spielman, does it more than anybody in the NFL. And that's just what they do. They also don't have a second-round pick, so they maybe would want to get that. That would make sense. But it came out this morning that they made some calls to maybe trade up. I think if it's a certain tackle, I'm thinking it's Rashawn Slater. Could be Sewell, could be Darsaw as well. But if that certain guy drops a little bit, they're going to trade up to pounce on him because it's a rare opportunity for them. They have not been able to get that tackle really ever because they're never really picking around that 14 range. So that would make sense as well. My only thing with the trade up is they don't have a second round to offer, and they have multiple 3s. Will a team accept that? I don't think the Vikings are going to win a bidding war. If they're fighting with another team to trade up to, that's the other problem. The Lions pick 7. The Lions going to help out the Vikings. The Bears helped out the Vikings, giving them from last year's draft. So possibly, I don't know if they're going to win a bidding war against somebody else, especially without a second-round pick. So you can argue both sides there. Maybe they end up staying put. And the Bears are interesting. They're kind of in the same boat as Washington. Washington, everyone says they're trading up for a quarterback, right? And I'd say not so fast. They might not be able to trade up that far. Team might not want to go that back, and they actually could trade up for a tackle. Maybe not as far as they would have to go for that quarterback. The Bears are in the same situation. They could trade up for a quarterback. I think it's a long shot close to a long shot because I don't think a team wants to go back to 20. I also don't think the Bears want to give up the price. Maybe they would. But I also could see them trading up not as far, but for a tackle and then cutting Charles Leno to save the cap space and then to have that tackle there. That's a possibility. But why I think they can trade down is because they have the league's least amount of cap space, and those teams, on top of that, they tried to add more players in free agency. They couldn't do it. So they fill the roster spots that they wanted to fill, and they get cap relief at the same time. So actually, trading down, there's a little more logic behind trading down for the Bears. Not that it's that appealing, but there is more there to say they may trade down. But I can't rule either one out. So those teams are interesting teams. Dolphins are definitely interesting because they've already traded and they can trade again. But Dolphins, Jags, the same boat because they have 2 picks, so it makes it more likely. But the Jags aren't going to trade the first pick, obviously. And the Vikings, the Bears, NFC North rivals there, I can sit here and debate all day that they should go up, they should stay, they should go down, or they will go up, they will stay, or they will go down. It's all evenly split. So 2 interesting random teams in the draft, but very interesting to say the least. I just can't wait to see what happens because there's going to be all kinds of surprises, like always, and that's what makes the draft so great. So can't wait to cover it. More videos on the way. Like I said, we got my top 50 coming, and we got a final mock draft, fan voted mock draft, rumors, and then winners, losers, grades, day 2 mock draft. That's all throughout the draft, and we got a bunch of videos after. There'll be a fan voted grades for every draft class, every team's draft class. You'll vote for that on our Twitter, so make sure you check that out. Link pinned in the comments for that, as well as anything else that you may need there. Smash that like button, subscribe, all that would be much appreciated. Turn notifications on because we're planning to go live day 1 of the NFL draft. So make sure you turn notifications on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter for all those important updates. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.